Kigali. I'm attending online.
Okay, good. You are most welcome to this webinar.
I'm actually in my home. That's why you can see some, frames.
Very good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good to see you.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I appreciate.
You are working very hard. You need assistance, deputies.
For sure.
Otherwise,
I need them. I will collapse.
Yeah, it's really urgent.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and thanks for joining. Thanks. This is a very interesting topic.
Yeah, sure.
I want to see how we move forward, how we address this issue of food insecurity across the EAC.
Sure, it's actually our docket.
Yes, it is.
Yes, so we have to make sure we
move
this agenda forward.
Invited you that you will also share your insight, what is happening, and especially being our eye and ears with the government.
It's not easy, but we have to find a synergy.
Yes.
To see how we can, continue to work closely with them and push forward. Yeah. It's very important. The scorecard under nutrition food security is very important to follow up.
Yes.
Since some countries are still in red, others in yellow.
Yes.
And we have like a reserve, stock for food. For instance, in Tanzania, they have a lot. In Uganda, they have a lot of food.
Yes.
But the distribution is still an issue.
Yes. And what is the reason? Why are they not releasing it?
Those issues of free movement of goods even is still an issue. It's not the issue for persons only, even for goods, products. We are making our borders a big issues instead of releasing, those goods, capitals free. We are enclosing ourselves.
You are right. You're right. Patrick, do we have the representative of GIZ on the call?
Yes, I think Mr. Philip from GIZ Business Culture is around.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to see all of you here.
Oh, welcome.
Good morning, Philip.
Good morning.
So maybe you can start the webinar. I have seen that we have enough participants, and some will continue joining in as we continue, so that we may keep time. So welcome everyone. Welcome to the webinar on impact of global crisis on food security in the East Africa community. And today's webinar, we are going to actually deliberate on impact of global crisis on food security, and also kick off the project on enhancing competitiveness of the agricultural food industry. So allow me to highlight the ground rules that we'll be following throughout this webinar. The first rule is that we'd like you to mute your mic and microphone and video when you're not speaking. Also to contribute to the meeting goals. Also, we stay focused and on point, and we keep time. The questions can be sent also on the chat group. You should be having the chat icon on your MS Teams application. And this meeting will be recorded, and the reports and the presentations of this meeting will be sent to all participants. Allow me to highlight the program. So today, we'll have opening remarks from Mr. John Bosco Kalisa, the Executive Director of East African Business Council. We are also looking to have remarks from the East African Grain Council and from our partners, GIZ Business Scouts for Development. Also, we'll be having remarks from the East African Community Secretariat. An official from the East African Community Secretariat will be giving us some remarks. And we'll have the chairperson of IALA Committee on Agriculture, Tourism and Natural Resources to also give remarks. After that, we'll be having our consultant who, together with EABC, undertook this study on impact of global crisis on food security, Dr. Margaret Kemengich. I hope you're around, Doctor, to present on the findings of the study. And after
around.
that, yes, welcome. To present on the findings of the study and also for us to ask questions and answer to improve the study as we validate it. Then we'll have a pre-launch of the study where we'll invite Honorable Francois together with our partners and also our CEO and also the participants to officially pre-launch the study. So my name is Patrick Moshi. I'm the Communication Officer for the East African Business Council, and I'm proud to be here and I'll be your moderator for today. So without further ado, allow me to invite to actually inquire if the representative of the East African Grain Council is around. Kindly unmute your mic and maybe you can just, so that we may know if you're around. And also if we have the representative from the EAC Secretariat. As we get them to join on board, allow me to allow our CEO, Mr. John Bosco Kalisa, to welcome, to give his opening remarks. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patrick. Good morning, bonjour, habari za asubuhi. Allow me, first of all, before I deliver my remarks, recognize and appreciate our stakeholders who have supported us to come up with this initiative. Of course, first of all, to appreciate GIZ Business Scout and SEQUA program for their continued support in terms of building our food value chain and ensure that ESC is very resilient in terms of the external shocks, which are very clear to everyone here. The COVID impact, the climate change, and the recent Russia-Ukraine conflict. Also appreciate the support from the ESC, the Secretary General and his team, the IARA chairperson, responsible for agriculture, tourism, and natural resources, the EABC board members present, Mr. Philip Glasser, the head of international component, GIZ Business Scout for Development, the CEOs of EABC National Focal Point present, the East Africa Grain Council, the Eastern and Southern Africa Small Scale Farmers Forum, Eastern African Farmers Federation, EABC board members, EABC Goodwill ambassadors, academia, research institution, industry, champions, agriculture value chain actors, development partners present, members of the media fraternity, as well as our good consultant, Dr. Margaret, who has ably done a quite commendable work in terms of diving deeper to look at the impact of global crises on food security in the ESC. So I welcome you, I welcome everyone to this important webinar on the impact of global crisis on food security in the East African community. And also we are going to kick off the project on enhancing competitiveness of agri-food industry and mitigating the impact of global crisis to improve food security in the ESC. Again, I would like to appreciate GIZ Business Scout for Development for engaging and partnering with EABC in this important study on the impact of global crisis on food security in the ESC. Distinguished guests, special appreciation again goes to SEQUA and the GIZ Business Scouts for development, for again providing technical and financial resources to EABC under their new project titled Enhancing Competitiveness of Agro-Food Industry and Mitigating the Impact of Global Crises to Improve Food Security in the EAC. So under this project, we are very glad that today we are going to deliberate and validate the finding of the study on the impact of global crisis on food security in the EAC. And I humbly urge you all to share your insights, ideas to inform the development and identify priority areas for action to enhance the competitiveness of the agro-food industry and mitigate the impact of the global crisis in the EAC. I'm also honored to shed brief highlights on the impact as the consultant will take you into the details of the finding. But let me start mentioning that the East African Community regional food insecurity is exacerbated by the natural disasters. Again, climate change has an impact, and we've seen it across our region. But also now, what is happening on the global scale, especially the COVID and the conflict. So the global crises, of course, have a very detrimental impact on our lives and livelihood, especially for the vulnerable household. But on a positive note, the EAC countries have demonstrated a high level of resilience in terms of mitigating external shocks, especially by they're building a kind of buffer in terms of how we could improve our food security. So I was looking at the data that prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, only Kenya had a score above average of 50.7 in 2019, followed closely by Rwanda. Rwanda by 48.2 and Uganda by 46.2. So at the height of the pandemic in 2020, only Burundi and DRC improved their scores with 37 and 40.7 respectively. That is, of course, from Global Food Security Index scores. So that showed that COVID had a detrimental impact in terms of our performance. But above all, I always say that EAC, among other regions, has demonstrated resilience, given our deeper commitment to infrastructure development, deeper commitment to diversified agriculture, and our investment in a productive infrastructure, despite that we are still grappling with some NTBs around our borders that heavily impede the movement of food value chain from some country with surplus to countries with deficit. And I think that's what we need to address in this webinar, to look at how do we smoothen and address those binding constraints that impede the free movement of food across the region. So the cost of a healthy diet in East Africa has been increasing due to global shocks and is estimated around $3.3 per person per year in 2020. So global shocks, of course, they disproportionately impact on women's economic opportunities. And I was looking at the data that when you look at the report, more than 70% of the farmers are women, and a disproportionate impact on their livelihood as well as on their income. So we need to ensure that whatever we are doing, we design a system that is inclusive, that promotes gender parity, that also takes into account the needs and aspirations of youth and women. So EAC countries, of course, we are doing very well, maybe compared to the rest of the world in terms of pushing for the gender parity within the food value chain. But we haven't achieved the required level, but at least there are positive signs moving in the right direction. So distinguished participants and the guests, So in order to cope up with the emerging global crisis and enhance our agro-food system and build sustainable resilience in the EAC, we should increase and be able to diversify our food production and expand our intra and extra regional trade in agriculture and improved food value chain in order to reduce food waste and increase access to nutritious food. We need to double our efforts in terms of strengthening our social safety nets to support the vulnerable population, especially youth and women. We need also to address the emerging inflation, which affects the household income, as well as their healthy diets. We need to work hard in terms of addressing those NTBs, which have ably highlighted, especially those at the borders, which tend to delay the movement of food from one country to another. But we also need to enhance our digital or deploy our digital tools to map out the areas where we have food surplus and also be able to supply those areas with the food deficit. We need, again, to enhance our regional agriculture policy framework, supporting interlinkages among the value chain actors, production, aggregation, processing, and the consumption. And I want to commend also the work that has been done by AGRA in looking at the food system across the region. And also we are working together to ensure that we improve those NTBs that impede the movement of food from surplus areas to deficit areas. So distinguished guests, again, EABC with the support from GIZ, Business Scout, and SEQA, we would like really to commit ourselves in terms of building on the finding of the study, and further we'll be conducting further training on various topics that impact on the food supply chains, especially on resilience, how to build a robust resilience system, how to promote smart climate agriculture, how to promote contract farming, and also navigate through those hurdles, including export procedures that are being cumbersome, also to empower agriculture value chain actors, including women, youth, farmers, and SMEs. So with those few remarks, again, let me say that I want to appreciate all our partners, especially GIZ, Business Scout, and the SEQA project. And again, we look forward to continue working together, but also our governments, our partner states who have supported our consultant to come up with very robust findings, which she will be able to articulate and present. So we look forward for that strong partnership from all the partners, government, private sector actors, especially those who have a keen interest to invest in food systems and the food value chain. So with those few remarks, allow me again to wish you a fruitful deliberation. Asanteni sana, thank you very much, merci beaucoup.
Yes, thank you very much, CEO, for the insightful remarks and highlighting to us the impact of COVID-19 on the food security and agricultural sector and other global crises. So without further ado, allow me to, as we wait for the participants from the EAC Secretariat and the East African Grain Council, allow me to invite Honorable Francois, the chairperson of IALA Committee on Agriculture, Tourism and Natural Resources, to also give her remarks on the impact of global crisis on food security. Welcome, Honorable.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Yeah, dear CEO EABC, distinguished participants, stakeholders, all protocols observed. Thank you very much for having me today to participate to this important, a meeting that is raising actions. It's a call for actions to make sure EAC continue to be resilient in terms of food security, but also to join this global initiative to make sure our population that are EAC centered, they continue also to be taken care of. My remarks as the chairperson of the Committee on Agriculture, Tourism and Natural Resources are based on the initiatives of YALA. Since I'm serving my second term, I'm building the remarks from the motion I moved last year. This motion was about a resolution of the Assembly urging the Council of Ministers to recommend the partner states to enhance gender equality in access to food and nutrition security in the community. And I built this and moved under Article 49, sub-Article 2D, 59.1, 105, 110, 111, 121, and 122 of the treaty, and also Rule 26 of the Rules of Procedure of the Assembly. I reminded the Assembly and also the Council of Ministers that under Chapter 18 of the Treaty, all partner states undertook to cooperate in the area of agriculture and food security with the overall objective to achieve food security and also rational agricultural production within the community. And also under Article 121, as I earlier said, the partner states recognize the indispensable role of women in socio-economic development and in business, and they have committed under Article 5 of the treaty to ensuring gender mainstreaming in all the community's endeavors in line with the principle of gender equality as one of the fundamental principles of the community under Article 6 of the treaty. I'm saying this because even the CEO ABC mentioned about the inclusion, the integration of women, especially women in small scale cross-border traders, since they are the ones occupying more than 70% of agricultural productivity. And also, by including also the youth and women are part of marginalized population groups, such as women who continue to bear the heaviest burden of food insecurity and malnutrition. As the people around the globe, including in EAC region, struggle to end hunger and the devastating effects of malnutrition, despite the fact that more than enough food is produced, to feed the global population. More than enough food is produced. But we also recognize that all partner states are the parties to the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights of 1966, which recognizes the right to adequate food to everyone. And also the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, 2030, especially SDG 2, to end hunger, achieve food security and improve the nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. And SDG 5, to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls, particularly in relation to ending all forms of discrimination against all women and girls everywhere, and giving women equal rights to economic resources, as well as access to ownership and control over land and other forms of property. We have financial services, inheritance, and natural resources. We are also recognizing that all partner states, together with other African countries, recognize that nutrition is a major pillar of the continent's socio-economic development, and also subscribe to the Agenda 2063, whose aspiration one calls for the promotion of a healthy and prosperous population and reducing malnutrition for all as a foundation for Africa's socio-economic foundation, and committed to ending hunger under the 2014 Malabo Declaration on Accelerated Agricultural Growth and Transformation. All of these are part of what the CEO highlighted the area. And we have also to appreciate the various initiatives undertaken to ensure food and nutrition security, such as the Africa Regional Nutrition Strategy. This is 2015 to 2025. And the Declaration on Nutritional Security for Inclusive Economic Growth and Sustainable Development in Africa. The resolution on the establishment of an Inter-African Center for Food Science, Technology, and Nutrition. The African Region Initiative for Stunting Elimination, that is the ARISE 2025 initiative. The 6th EAC Development Strategy, This is at the EAC level, which includes food security and nutrition as one of the strategic development objectives of the community. The EAC Food and Nutrition Security Policy 2016, the EAC Food and Nutrition Security Strategy 2019-2023, and particularly the current EAC Food Security Action Plan, whose overachieving objective is to contribute to elimination of hunger, malnutrition, and extreme poverty in the East African region by the year of 2023. This year is the year we are just running in. So this is really urgent. I'm not going to read everything in the motion, but allow me also, as I bring these remarks, to bring the resolutions the House took. In accordance with those articles I highlighted of the treaty, the Assembly recommended to the Council of Ministers to establish a gender-sensitive regional food crisis response plan, including a regional food reserve that will cater for the needs of small-scale farmers and herders in drought-ravaged rural area, especially women and children who are always the most affected disadvantaged population. Mainstream gender in the implementation of the EAC Food and Nutrition Security Strategy 2019-2023 and the EAC Food Security Action Plan. Urge the partner states to put in place appropriate measures to address gender-based restriction to agricultural land and other productive resources, to put an end to the existing discriminatory social-cultural norms, including food taboos forced on women and girls, and promote positive and equal gender norms at the household and the community level. Urge the partner states to enhance women's involvement in agribusiness and enterprises, as well as participation in nutritious food production. Urge the partner states to integrate nutrition education into the school curricula to raise awareness and promote healthier consumption patterns and conduct outreach activities on the role of nutrition as a critical aspect of safe pregnancy and motherhood. This was in terms of preventing stunting, level that is at rise in EAC. Urge partner states to implement consistent and inclusive school feeding programs to ensure that both young girls and boys enroll, stay and perform well in school, especially for children in vulnerable circumstances. Having said this, the list is not, exhaustive. These were just under, oversight, under our legislation role, and also the representation role we have as the three core functions of parliamentarians. Thank you very much. We will keep brainstorming on this. I have just mentioned some aspect, but all the people of EAC are involved in this. Thank you very much. Those were my few remarks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Francois Umukiza, for those insightful remarks on and calling for action on the region to be resilient on food security. And you have highlighted very well about the different articles and continental and regional agreements, and also at international level, that have called on cooperation on food security matters at regional level, and also at the AU level, where the Malabo Declaration, and also you have also called on the establishing of a gender-sensitive food response plan for Africa and for the region. Thank you very much. We'll still call on you again to give us more remarks and contribution during the validation and presentation by the consultant. Allow me now to also invite Mr. Philip Glasser, Head of International Component, GIZ Business Council for Development. Welcome, Mr. Philip.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here today on this important event. Dear Mr. John Bosco Kaliza, EABC Executive Director, dear representatives of East African Community, representatives from the East Africa Legislative Assembly, dear ladies and gentlemen, My name is Philipp Gläser, and I'm with the management team of GIZ's Business Scouts for Development program. On behalf of our program, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our partners, the East Africa Business Council, for organizing this valuable event. As Business Scouts, we are once again very happy to partner with EABC on this important project of getting insights into the impact of global crisis on food security in East Africa, and also launching at the same time a project to enhance competitiveness of the agri-food industry to improve food security in East Africa. Our program Business Scouts for Development, as some of you may know, is implemented by GIZ on behalf of the German government through the Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, the BMZ. And one of the key priority areas of the German government, as listed in the Agenda 2030, is to address hunger issues. And together with the Global Alliance for Food Security, a number of interventions to fight hunger crisis have been launched already. An essential aspect to ensure food security is also to support economic transformation into a sustainable, resilient agricultural and food system, which will foster sustainable value chains in the agri-food sector. The region of East Africa has recently faced a number of crises such as natural disasters, climate change, the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the ongoing Russian war in Ukraine, which has disrupted vital food value chains. And from our perspective, a collaborative approach is essential to address and identify measures that will improve food security in East Africa. Through our cooperation with EABC and other important partners such as the Federation of German Food and Beverage Industries, the Federation of German Industries, and the German Organic Food Production Alliance, we support sectoral exchange and know-how transfer, which will contribute towards the creation of sustainable supply chains, while at the same time repositioning and strengthening the competitiveness of the agri-food sector in East Africa, particularly considering MSMEs. Once again, I would like to thank the EAC and all our partners in East Africa for the great cooperation in the past. We're looking forward to get more details of the study findings and at the same time kicking off the implementation of the project to empower agricultural value chains. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Philip, for the remarks. And as EABC, we are committed to partner with GIZ Business Scout to undertake the different activities. So allow me now to request Dr. Margaret Kemengich to come on board. Dr. Margaret, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes. I invite you now to project and do the presentation, or would you like us to support you on the projection?
I am on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me take this opportunity to thank the Executive Secretary, IALA, and the GIZ, who have spoken ahead of me, and they have eloquently covered the study. So I'll actually be repeating what they have already said, and I'm happy that we are all in tune with the issues on food security in the EAC region, and also the challenges that we are experiencing in the context of global crisis. And as we already indicated, the global crisis we are talking about just now are the climate change, COVID-19, insecurity, trade which we have led into trade disruptions, and these have actually exacerbated risks in global food access. So as we are discussing EAC, we are saying, how can we contextualize this in the global arena? And then we can now come back to EAC so that we do not feel it is only narrowed and the issues, the global crisis were targeting EAC. But what is coming through is that really the global food access and the trade were impacted. there was also volatility in agriculture, increased economic inequality, and the disruptions in the supply chains. This has resulted in high inflation, and we shall see how it impacts on food, fuel shortages, high input costs, current account and fiscal deficits, increased debt burdens, poverty, and prohibitive trading costs. Climate change in particular has a major impact in the context of ESC, because for our food production is rain-fed. The transitory effects of COVID-19 and the Russian war have brought out very salient issues in what it is we are going to address when it comes to mitigation. Because for the first time, we are getting export bans. Then during COVID, we were all under lockdown. So there was no way you could even access medicine, leave alone food. And when the climate change was at its worst, food, you could not have any food. And for those countries which are within the ASAL region, they really suffered the effects of climate change. And I think we had a lot of that. And I think Kenya had disproportionately been affected by climate change. So as the EABC cardinal role is, it is really on business environment. And that I picked it even from the ES, who highlighted that need. And then we are also looking at growth, because we can't do business on what we don't produce. We can, in times of export bans, we cannot import. So that is the bit where we are now saying, as we go forward and as we propose mitigation measures, they are really to address the business environment, to address stakeholder engagement, so that they can now fully understand their different roles in as far as food security is concerned. And we did discuss the methodology, but in passing, we are saying there was a lot of literature review, but we wanted to contextualize what was happening before COVID, what has happened after COVID. How did the Russia-Ukraine war impact on food security, and what has climate change been doing all along before even COVID arrived and before Ukraine? So those are the issues we are looking at, and we are now saying what are our major challenges so that we can mitigate those areas. A number of reports were prepared, they have been shared. We hope they'll be of use to all the teams. So what are some of the findings? At the global level, we are saying really nobody was spared, and especially to the low-income countries. The more advanced countries at least survived temporarily, not all through, because there were quite a number of other areas, like in the energy. We saw Europe having a major devastating effect. However, in the African continent, where ESC is situated, because we are net food importers, we are net food, net input importers of fertilizer, energy, and these are critical inputs in agriculture. So we suffered proportionately within that time. And what is happening is that, at least at the household level, this has really impacted on the health, especially for the children, and also access to food. And this one is going to kicking a critical recommendation as we go forward. Then we said, really, where does one get the diet? And energy food, dietary energy is very critical, and it comes from, in the case of Africa and the ESC, it is cereals. And these cereals are low on micronutrients. So you can see that already as we are feeding, we have a major shortfall in that our cereals and the tubers do not have high energy content. So as we go forward, we've got to see how we can get more energy content. And this is where now the IALA and the ES, when they brought out the key areas of value chain development, really that is where now, especially in the edible oils, we can get the fats and edible oils, which are very high in energy and micronutrients. We have fruits, but we are not eating enough of those fruits. So we are now saying, what are the implications of these three categories of crises? That is the COVID-19, Ukraine war, climate change, and the climate change encompasses a lot of things. And we are saying what it has come with is price shocks. At least no one country was saved from the price shocks. We had very high prices for food. At times we could not access the food. Then the inputs were very expensive, which means cost of production was high. And the net effect is that there is high prices, and because affordability is low, this resulted in malnutrition. Then the distortions in the marketing policies, especially where there were bans. And then globally, there were also attempts to circumvent conventions on trade agreements. And we saw the developed countries actually doing the bans. In the COVID, even health medicine was not being released. So that again tells us, where should we put our effort? Where should we put investment? Where is the competitiveness going to lie in? Which are the value chains we've got to take into account? We should not relax now that things are beginning to come back to normal, because we don't know which virus is coming next, which war is coming next, and what the climate change can come up with. So what has happened? Now you can see all the prices, energy, oil, grains, everything is on the increase, and they started from 2020 when COVID came into effect, and they worsened in 2022 when the Ukraine war started. So we can now associate directly that really these are the aspects. Later on in one of the slides, we shall see how climate change has also impacted. If you look at some of the prices, because this was global, you cannot discern the impact of climate change, but we shall look at the climate change, and we can quickly associate what the different types of climate change have done to the food prices. Globally, you can see food prices are on the increase, all categories of food. So it is not ESC alone. And because we are net importers, we are feeling the pinch harder. And you know, our exports earn us very little. So it means that you've got to eat less, because you cannot import the normal basket. So that again translates into unhealthy behavior. Then there was the cost of transport. It went quite high, and it was zigzagging all over the place. However, by 2022, it started now to normalize. But when you look between 2020 and 2021, it skyrocketed. And this is the time when there were lockdowns. So that bit translates immediately into prices, food prices. And the inflation didn't spare anybody. Actually, you will see that most governments across the globe, even the most developed countries, all have had problems with inflation, and they have been trying to bring down inflation by increasing the interest rates. And to increase those interest rates, it means you can't borrow because it is too expensive, and it forces you to cut down on production. So it is not only on food that where inflation hit, it hit all the productive sectors, and this came with the unemployment, increased unemployment. So the global food situation has really created many other challenges which are of socioeconomic nature, and for some, they are a little political. We've had a number of countries going on strike and, causing political upheavals just because of food. We had the IALA talk about the gender issues and, even the ES, and it is really women and the youth who are affected hardest when there is shortage of food. So this is why we must now engage them to make sure that at least there are certain crops, if it is climate change, that they can diversify into and ensure that there is continuous access to food. So what have we looked at the ESC? And at the ESC level and the partner state, we have actually said the policies are there. And the objectives, it is on food and the nutrition security for all, with a focus in the rural development. However, we are still an aid food importing country, and some of the areas which the ES did bring out, we could really do with more intra-regional trade, especially where we have excess food. At this point in time, we should not be importing rice and the sugar from outside the region, because those ones are adequate as we stand now if we can trade and remove those barriers at the borders. And really, it would create opportunity and even strengthen the value chains, and everybody would be a beneficiary. The COVID-19 was an eye-opener, and this is where now we've got to go into value addition, do a lot more on the industrial, in the industrial sector to value add, and come up with fertilizer, produce fertilizer. There is now green energy. Let's see how we can tap into the green energy so that we reduce on the importation of fossil fuels. Then we have to look and explore how we can at least streamline the transport sector on infrastructure development so that we can move foods around, because for quite a number of them, even where we have excess, you cannot move the food around. So those ones are, again, some of the areas where one has to invest in order for us to take full advantage of the regional markets. Not only ESC, we have the expanded tripartite, we have the CFTA, and that one has food which we can access at lower costs and on terms which may not be very stringent as those we would be getting from the developed world. And we are now saying each of the countries have, in addition to food policies, they have also food security commitments. So those policies are in place. So it is not new, it is just enforcing them. So each of the countries has their food policies, all our 7 regional partner states, and they are very specific. All we need to do is to tap into them. More importantly, we also have regional food policies and strategies. So, and most of these are anchored on the continental and the global initiatives. So really, we are not short of policies, we are not short of strategies, we are only short in enforcement. And then now, when it comes to the ESC, we looked what is it that we eat in all our partner states. And you can see that the staple foods are similar. They may be low on energy, but the food is there and we can trade on it. The unfortunate thing is that they have very short shelf lives. Other than maize, rice, millet, and the sorghum, which you can keep dry, the rest are, foods that you must eat immediately, you bring from the garden. So that again quickly tells you we must do value addition and improve and extend the shelf life. These foods, when you do innovation, you can do quite a lot, and we cannot run out of food. And for quite a number of them, really we can interest the youth so that they can now go into products that they can work in with. So you can look at the diet and the nutritional impacts. And at globally, you can see that the Americas have very shorter dependence on cereals. They have more on the fats and oils, and that is where there is more energy. And yet these are the very cereals and the legumes that we have locally in the region. And if we did value addition, we can, move up the value chain and have access to energy producing foods. So we are really not short of what to do. It's just the innovation. And you can see even on the diets of the partner states, the ones who are now good at cereals, we have Kenya and South Sudan are heavy on cereals. Burundi, Rwanda are on roots and the tubers. URT is on cereals and the roots and tubers. Uganda is on cereals and fruits. So you will see now the mix. I know in the report, there is a schedule where we had different categories, and during the training, one can highlight the different foods which are available in the partner states and say, you can combine this, and this, and this, and you will have a complete nutritional value food. And I think the ES had highlighted this one, where we are now saying that whereas our foods are low on energy food products, food security is not as bad. We are not badly off, other than when we have climate change and the occasional COVID or Ukraine coming in. We have generally survived and we've got enough food, as it were. And you will also see that even where there are shortages within the region, there is still quite a bit of cross-border trade. And in that cross-border trade, it is really mainly in the cereals and legumes and a lot of fruits and vegetables that is now taking place. So the diets, at least access is there. You may not have the affordability. And in that affordability, this is where now the SMEs have to do business so that they can generate incomes for purposes of affordability. Similarly, the women must also do business so that they can afford food. And the prevalence of severe food insecurity actually picked up with the COVID. And now, when we thought we were coming off COVID, Ukraine came in, and then climate change also immediately followed. So that is, you can see that over time, food situation has been improving, but it is only those crises when they come in, and it is because we only go to farm, you come to cook and you eat. We don't have much in storage, and that is really where our challenge is. Then, as we had said, we are a net food importer, and the whole region imports. We are not fully self-sufficient. The others import less, but you can see that in the intra-EAC, Burundi, Kenya, and Rwanda are the ones who do quite a lot of importation. And, you know, even in Uganda, the others are still okay. So this one now says we are vulnerable. When you don't export, like now, when the demand for our exports was reduced because we are exporting agricultural products, foreign exchange is not adequate, which means even to import the food becomes a very expensive affair. Then we can now look at the climate change, and we juxtapositioned now the frequency of natural disasters against how the food situation in each of the partner states is. And you can see that 2011, 2015, 16, 18, 19, 2020, and 2021, we have climate issues. However, nature is, you know, comes in handy also to help us out. So it makes sure that not all the partner states in the region are having challenges at the same time. There is a few countries are exposed while others have good climate, which means we can really produce food. And that is why we said, let's work on our intra-regional trade and let's not create NTBs at the borders where food is concerned. To the extent that each of the partner states has an assured market, really produce and take advantage of the cross-border market, because you don't have to pack it in very expensive regalia. It comes in sacks, and you know, it goes direct to the market. You don't even have to take it to the supermarket. You take it to the open air, and you know, you look at that. So there is that bit where we should be thanking God that when it is climate change, it doesn't come in one go. Unlike the COVID-19, which came and exposed all of us, the Ukraine, which came and impacted on all of us. So what is it that we can do, and how can we leverage those opportunities where climate change gives us at least room to produce for ourselves? And if you look at the period when we had problems on climate change, really those are the areas where we had food production also going low, and the index, the COVID and the Ukrainian war worsened the prices. I think what is coming through is that it is really Kenya, because of the arid nature, which has challenges in as far as food is concerned. The rest of the countries can produce and trade with Kenya, and if Kenya can do more value addition to make sure that even when they import, they add value and lengthen the shelf life. The prices, of course, went wild, and no one country was spared. Even those countries which were more or less self-sufficient in food, they have had their challenges, and it is basically because of the inflation and because the inputs have become very expensive. And a number of people now are exposed to hunger. And you can see that we have nearly all the countries are exposed to hunger. So no one country is really saying that they are fully self-sufficient. Others are less. You can see Tanzania is missing from this data. It wasn't as hit as badly as the other countries. So you can see that, you know, a number of countries where the weather didn't affect them badly, they can handle quite a number of those areas. The affordability is still a very difficult one, given that the population, the bulk of the population is not employed. They are on below $1 a day. So when you have these high prices, really they cannot go to the market if the food is taken to the market, but rather if they could produce it themselves, because the larger proportion of the population is rural, then they can handle and feed themselves. So it is now diversifying food production in the rural setting so that you can reduce the cost that a household has to incur to go to the market. Then you can also reduce on the malnutrition and the disruptions from the climate change. So we have to look for climate smart agriculture so that really you contain this climate change has come, it is staying with us, it is not transitory. It is, if anything, it is taking root, and it now comes more frequently. In the past, it would give you time to recover, but these days it is very frequent. So what actions did the governments take? So once the governments were exposed to these challenges of global crisis, really governments took action. They had to stop some of the development agenda programs, introduced subsidies on food, on fuel, looked at policies and repurposed quite a number of them to make sure that there is an increase in food production in the region. They are now going full throttle on the promoting value chains, and this is where now EABC has to partner with the private sector, especially those in the business arena, to make sure that they can handle quite a number of those areas. Governments have to look at food reserves, storage, look into ways of reducing on wastage and farm losses. Then we now, because the cereals have a longer shelf life, we need to produce more of those and also adopt drought-resistant products. And since we are very competitive in agriculture products, let's take advantage in those areas, produce, but value add. And then focus now more on the SMEs and the private sector, because those are the ones who can now store for longer use. And then, so we are now saying really agriculture is not food alone. It is, you know, it is an employer, it is for industry and all those areas. So you can see that once agriculture is performing, the welfare of the people is already sorted out. The only country which is dependent on oil is South Sudan, and that is why their agriculture component is very low. Otherwise, the rest of the EAC countries are agriculture based. So our focus has to be on agriculture. And South Sudan has very fertile land. So again, that land has to be utilized to make sure that we have enough food going around. Then we need now to do the intra-industry. There is quite a lot happening now in the milk, in the cereals, and what have you. This is where we are now increasing the shelf life. And the ES spoke very passionately on this area. This is really where our future is. Let's not just produce it in raw form. Let's add value. And that way you can store for a rainy day. Then we need to diversify. I know we had come to say staple and what have you. We must start now diversifying our plates, whatever we serve. For quite a number, for example, in Kenya, you must eat ugali. But really, the bananas are there, cassava is there, all those other foods. Let's eat. In Uganda, you must eat bananas. And in Rwanda, Burundi, I think it is mainly the cassava and the other tubers and what have you. Let's now go back, because we abandoned millet, we abandoned sorghum, we abandoned quite a number of drought-resistant crops, which we need now to go into because of climate change. It will not carry our bananas. It may not carry a lot unless you have enough rain. It may not carry the potatoes and the rest of it. So we now have to see how can we coexist with the changing climate, changes in the climate, so that we use less water, we harvest, use less water, but produce enough food to go around. We had 35 respondents, and you can see that quite a number of them, they are aware of what is happening to food. So when one goes to sensitize, they already know what the challenges are. What they need is just support. What is it you can do for us? And this is where GIZ comes in very handy to make sure that we build on their knowledge of what the challenges are to make sure that there is self-sufficiency in food. We can't continue importing from the rest of the world when we can produce quite a number of those areas, and the challenges that we have, we turn those into opportunities. So like losses, then diseases, fragmentation of land, and so you look to see how you can do population settlements, the marketing, networking, and the rest of them, so that we now get the interlinkages across the partner states. No one country should say they can handle it on their own. We are going to be heavily interdependent going into the future, and that is where now we should be preparing for that strategy. And in the SWOT analysis, we are saying technology is there, but we need to enhance it. Quite a number of countries already have umbrella bodies. We have staple foods. We've got also personnel, and they may need polishing here and there, but there are people there, the labor is there. Let's utilize it. Quite a number of weaknesses is what I have just talked about. We are handling perishable food, which is farm to cooking to eating, and that is the end. The next day you go back to the farm. Now, if we continue on that, really when the drought hits, you can't go to the farm. Then there is also over-reliance on rain-fed agriculture. Then we need now to address the issue of pastoralists, especially in the countries where we have arid lands, so that we see how can they handle the livestock to coexist with the climate change. Then there are opportunities, trade, new crops. Then you can do value addition. policies, governments are very keen now to come up with the incentives. So if we go on the threats where we say we want to import everything, at times such may be dumped, and when it is dumped, it means your local producer cannot find the market. So this is where now you ring fence within the regional blocks, and then banditry and the rest of them. But we need to address the quality requirements, like in the SPS, TBTs, to make sure that now those products have a good shelf life. So what are some of the mitigation measures? We now have to go into a systemic approach and build on resilience in food supply. And I think this is what ES had indicated. We see what can we do to import substitute. We've got edible oil, which we are importing, and we have all the ingredients. It is only production. And I think if the study on the value chain, it really focused more on those agro. So it is not that we don't have the products, the quality, but instead we have only zeroed in on 1 or 2 food products and left out everything else, and relied on external markets. But time is coming when we must really move into that. We do value addition, invest in storage capacities, because we must, in good times, let's put away something that will come in during a rainy day. Then let's use technology. Then use high yielding, short maturing products, especially when we already know there is a drought coming. There is no point of now planting long maturing crops. So in this process, let's look at policies. What is it that can be changed so that we prepare for the changed environment, the changed business environment globally, taking into account the lessons we've just had from COVID-19 and the lessons we've just had from Ukraine. Because I think those lessons didn't come in just for us to go through them. They came in to prepare us to see what is it, how can we respond. Then let's make sure that we have wide stakeholder engagement. Let all the stakeholders be party to the whole processes, rather than having a boardroom decision. We need to get all of these stakeholders. We look at the challenges together. Then we must now make sure that really we continuously monitor and evaluate to see where the food situation is taking us. Then let's also capacity build and look for bridging foods. Strengthen the relevant institutions, because where we are heading to now, there'll be more on institutions. If you are going to do storage, it is not at a household level. These have to be big storage institutions where now excess is aggregated and it is kept for a rainy day. So at country level, what are some of the key interventions that we should look into? Like Burundi, we need associations so that we can get at least groups to look at quite a number of those areas. There will be many others, including advocacy, but the critical one is associations, the business associations, agriculture associations, so that they can be looking at their activities. And even when it comes to intervention, it is easy to use that framework. In DRC, they are still at war for quite a while. They have a lot of natural resources. They need to strengthen their agriculture policy. Then they can look at quite a number of their other areas. Kenya needs to work on self-reliance, and because of the huge arid, it needs now to look as how can they use that area, and this is where Kenya needs to do a lot of water harvesting so that they can use the agricultural land. Then in Rwanda, it is more on the strategies. There is food there, but you saw it was in roots and the others. The nutritional aspect was still low, but there is room really to improve. It is just a matter of capacity building, and then the food that they eat can be strengthened, and they will have the requisite energy. In Uganda, they have very good climate, so it is just the research part of it, so that they can at least come up with the good quality seeds, and they can also expand the extension purposes. In URT, really, URT has a lot of food, so URT should just domesticate regional integration policies on trade in food and open up the borders. They have income because they are not giving out that food for free. They are building their incomes in the country. So that bit, you can see the URT is unique. South Sudan is, instead of just living on oil, when we now go green, that oil might not be enough to buy food. So the best thing is to prepare now. And since they have very good arable land, they start going into food production, and they reduce those high taxation on those elements. So there is quite a lot which are unique to each country. And you know, once we address those country-specific areas, then really food supply is going to be adequate within the region, because you can see we are just talking EAC here. How about when we go tripartite? How about when we go CFTA? The food situation should be a thing of the past. So for quite a number of these areas, when you look at all those interventions, really, for a while, we are going to need humanitarian interventions. And for example, now when we have Sudan and the DRC at war among themselves, that we need to have had food in the other countries so that that food is shared with the countries that are having conflicts. Then we need also to lower the cost of nutrition. You saw when the food was costing a lot more than what the household can afford, in which case they are going without food. So what is it we can do in order to lower the cost of food? Then what is it that, given now climate change is a reality, what should we do to ensure that we can adapt to the changes in climate change? And then address incomes. How can we improve household incomes? And this is where we brought in the SMEs, let them at least participate in the market, trade in food, and really their incomes it would improve. So we now can strengthen our economic resilience. Once you have incomes, you have food, you can really trade among yourselves. And then we can now shift to sustainable consumption patterns. You remember where we are saying have energy, adequate energy, micronutrients, so that you have a sustainable consumption. Then you will not be exposed to sicknesses at very frequent times. Your body can sustain and resist any attacks. That, Chair, is the end of the presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Margaret Kemengich. Yeah, for the elaborate presentation on impact on the study on impact of global crisis on food security in the East Africa Community region. And we have really had a lot and insightful thoughts and about the findings of the research. Now I welcome participants to feel free to raise their hands to answer questions or to participants, you're welcome to ask questions. You may post the question on the chat group, and you may also request the question to be answered by the presenter or our CEO or Honorable Francois. I welcome participants to answer questions.
Patrick, perhaps maybe I wanted just to kick it off by thanking Dr. Margaret for elaborate, detailed presentation. And my comments, they are general because the study has really done a quite commendable work. One was on the impact of this global crisis on food security, but looking at the countries that are displaced, very much displaced. You were looking at your data, looking at generally 3 countries that are heavily hit, which is Kenya, Rwanda, and Burundi. So I was looking at those countries because it has also impact on their currency, because their currency currently is affected by this global crisis. So in my view, we need to look at what are those value chain that these 3 countries have that can have that drought or to be shock resistant. That's one. Maybe you may reflect on that. 2, was also looking at the way you mentioned that the current cereals or what we are producing does not provide the required energy. It is also very important because it has also an association, our correlation with the stunted growth of our children. So I wanted also to look at what, and again you said there is a potential in terms of the regional production capacity, but what we are producing does not provide the right nutrients. Maybe you could, the doctor, you could reflect on that and give us a clear how do we again given that this project is continuing in terms of capacity building, what are those cereals could we focus on, or could we enhance in terms of production so that we're able to meet the nutrition that is required for our babies, for our kids, in terms of the growth. Otherwise, we wouldn't be happy to have a stunted growth region where we are producing people who are not well fed. Finally, I think I really agree on the challenges that you've ably highlighted, including post-harvest losses, deployment of technology, and I wanted also to look at, we've seen various interventions with regard to a number of organizations like Agra, what they are doing. I don't know if this issue has been coming on often or frequently, the issue of post-harvest losses. And I wanted also to hear from you how we can address that. Finally, on my side, was I appreciated, and I had mentioned it in my remarks, was embracing digital technology in the both production, distribution. How do we take advantage of the digital trade or digital commerce in terms of enhancing our productivity, in enhancing our food supply chains and the systems, and what can be done. And that also leads to access to finance. It has been a daunting challenge, access to agricultural finance. It has been a daunting challenge across EAC. I know Equity had started a program on resilience, but I don't know where it has, if it has had any impact at all. But this is also an issue we need to look into. Those 4 areas, challenges you highlighted, we need to go deeper in terms of seeing how we can address them so that we're able to build a very inclusive, sustainable, and resilient food value chain across EAC. Because again, from your data and the indication, it is really a shame, it's a paradox to see across almost a quarter of our population, they are food insecure. That's not the way we want to take this region. That's not the way we should be engaging our policymakers. That's not the way we should work as an integrated region. We must take it as an agent, and I'm happy Honorable Umuchiza is here. This should be one of her priority, her urgent task to engage the IARA, to engage the heads of state. We can't be an insecure, we can't promote hunger in the region when we have 60% of our land when it is Arab. There is something we are not doing right. And I think from your study, Dr. Margaret, you shouldn't try to massage, but we need to be clear where things are not working. They need to show those gaps, which we can jointly with, of course, support from our donor, GIZ, Business Scouts, in terms of addressing those issues. Thank you very much. I see a number of hands. Patrick, please, can you allow others to speak?
Well, thank you very much, CEO, for the questions. Allow me to give the floor to Honorable Francois, then Abu Bakr will follow. Please make your question short so that we may have ample time for the consultant and other team members to answer the question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for the floor, Mr. Patrick. Thank you very much, the CEO and the presenter, Dr. Margaret, for the well-elaborated and clear, presentation. It will help us as parliamentarians, to take up all the issues mentioned here, but we still need some, highlights to clarify some issues like price increase you mentioned, especially it's observed here. I'm Rwandan as well, and I'm based now, I'm in Kigali. Right now, we still face, the issues with the rise of the price at the market. In population are just complaining, though the government is trying to invest, to add some more money to reduce the cost of the food, at the market, but we still have those issues. And also the cost of transport and the interest rate that is being observed across the EAC. This is an issue that needs to be worked on together with even EABC. It's very important that we work on these 3 aspects to allow free movement of goods, and part of the goods are also food. And you said the policies are there. I may even say the policies are good. And at EAC level, I have remarked that as a parliamentarian, the issue of enforcement, the issue of implementation is a big issue. I don't know how we can get rid of this non-implementation of policies at EAC level, because it has become like a disease. Maybe you as researchers, you can give some tips on how as parliamentarians we can guide our head of state, our implementers, to make sure they put their commitments into action, because it is really a disease, and we can't just continue to talk to ourselves. So food policies are the good ones, but enforcement remain an issue, and we need them to work. It is very important. You will give us some tips or advices I can take up to my fellow parliamentarians, even at the national parliaments, to support them, since we work together as per the treaty under Article 49 and 65 of the treaty. We have our mandate to work with the national assemblies. And you talked about intra-EAC trade that needs to be enhanced. It's really, really very important. Intra-EAC trade is just kind of a skeleton. If we look at the data, I'm not going to read the data because I'm not presenting, but it is so unfortunate that we are just importing even countries that are able to produce their own sufficient food is importing. I could not understand the country like Kenya with its size. I understand that they have, you know, some areas, arid areas, but, you know, their economy could be even the, you know, the key supporter country for all EAC. So I think we need this smart agriculture to support, you know, Kenya, mostly those arid areas like Turkana. You know, me, I'm always touched when I read. I haven't reached that area, but when I see photos, images of those people dying of hunger in Turkana and also Karamoja, those areas, you know, those are the countries that are self-sufficient in terms of food, or should be, especially in Uganda. So I think we needed to do much more, you know. Thank you very much for the findings, because these findings are really tangible, but we need to see the way forward and the way out to hunger, you know, to minimize the researches also from, you know, USAID, you know, to see how we can reduce the stunting level, you know, percentage in our countries. And, you know, all of them have got those numbers of stunting, you know, in children below the age of 5. So it's very important. And also another question, as you know, I'm not going to monopolize the speech, but how EAC can focus more on the countries that do more food importation than others. You know, only 2 countries are landlocked. Those are Burundi and Rwanda. I don't know for South Sudan, but South Sudan is also a big country that can manage from the oil and do smart agriculture and support EAC as well. But, you know, these other countries, I don't know how we can support those countries that do more importation by having access to food. We have been talking of allowing the food movement, free movement of food. It's an issue. URT was commended for having enough food and nutritious, by the problem of releasing the food. You know, during COVID-19, because the COVID is a part of the, let me say, the 4 points you put out, you know, climate change, you know, Ukraine war and others. But COVID-19, during COVID-19, I read somewhere that URT had fully packed reserve of grains, but they could not release those grains. I read an article. I can't recall the author, but if you ask me, I can find the author. They had grain reserved there, but other countries were, you know, people were dying of even hunger. They were eating from their reserve grains for agriculture. You know, like in Rwanda, they were giving, you know, the stock that will support farmers, then to be eaten by, you know, people, because they had no other choice during COVID-19. But other countries, they had the grain reserve that could not be released to support EAC. We needed to be more supportive as EAC and also advance together. We are competing in terms of food. We should be supporting each other, you know, because we are going together heading to AFCFTA, as you said, tripartite engagement, all those things. So we need to be more resilient and also to try to find our own solutions as a region by building on the initiatives and the commitment we have got from international covenants, regional, you know, initiatives, and how to handle the livestock and to coexist, you know, with the droughts. Let me tell you, maybe I was to be given some minutes to add on, you know, my presentation. You know, we are bringing in a livestock bill under the initiative of private members bill. But sometimes we get issues with even getting the funds, you know, to support the Council of Ministers bills side of that, because we have 2 kinds of bills. So we need the assembly to be more supported in terms of getting the budget, because as we are not a donor funded assembly, because our budget is attached to the secretariat. The CEO said Yala is here. You know, they have heard about these corporations, all those things. We are there and we are willing to support, but we need to work closely, as you said, with the stakeholders engagement. PPP, this is public-private partnership, is very important because you cannot work alone. But with working closely with you researchers, academia, with even governments and civil society, I think we will move the agenda of this food insufficient forward, because we have policies, we have commitments at the international and regional level, Africa, continental level, and I think we reach out. We don't need to go humanitarians. I have taken this, and we have to continue to, to make noise. EAC should not go humanitarians, because we are food sufficient and we can allow affordability, accessibility, and also nutritious. That's the quality. We are lacking equality at the EAC. So we should make sure we invest in this, and to be able to do that, climate change is the reality. Yala requested the council to expedite their bill on climate change. But until now, I don't know at which level they are, but we haven't received any bill to mitigate the climate change issues. We know they are working on it. But with the EABC and you, we have to continue to push this agenda so that the Council of Ministers, with their workload also, they are overloaded. They can find a way to be supported by other entities that can make their work to be speed up. It's very important. And also, under agriculture, tourism, natural resources, we have got like clusters under these specific committees. We have got clusters with the climate change initiatives. We have members that are championing climate change. And in addition to that, we have also to bring in the issues of environmental protection, because they are also affecting the livelihoods of the population. Plastics, single-use plastics, the waste management, ABC is working on that, but all of us are working on that. They are also impeding on the children growth. The young babies that are using plastics, recipients, are eating even the toys they are using. They may affecting them, stunting them, and we are not aware of the source of these things. Cancer, all those the things we consume from plastics. So we still have a lot to dig up and analyze. Thank you very much. I would like to add also a question on plastic for you, because plastic and the food is also an issue to look at. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Francois. Now welcome Abu Bakar to ask his question. Abu Bakar, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to be brief. Yes, true. I'm Dr. Bakar Muhammad Moki from Uganda Network of Businesses, Kampala. Now, she did not talk about, first of all, thank you very much for the research and the presentation. I did not hear the effects of declining soil quality. Our people cannot afford fertilizers, and the soils are declining at a terrible rate. The soil nutrients, the soil are declining at a very terrible rate. She has not hinted on that. How are we going to address that high depletion rate of nutrients in the soil towards food security? Then two, there's also the issue of terminator seeds. In most communities, we could keep maize and plant in another season. Now we don't do that. So we have terminator seeds. You have to buy seeds every day. And in terms of animals, we have incest in animals. You cannot have offsprings reproducing. That's going to affect the food security. So how are we going to address those issues when our people cannot afford to buy seeds every season? And the type of seeds that we could dry and plant in the next season are no more. They have been contaminated by the so-called hybrid seeds. So what is the paper saying about that? Then there's the issue of pesticides, misuse of pesticides, herbicides in animals and so on, which has brought about the antimicrobial resistance. This is also going to affect the food security, because the farmers continue spending money on treatment and so on, with no response. The MR, antimicrobial resistance due to misuse. Now, all these have impacts on food security. Now, the paper is cited on that. We need to articulate these issues, and then we see how to address. Second last is on low irrigation. We have not yet adopted low irrigation, and yet in smart agriculture, we need to have irrigation if you are talking about food security. Now, we have very low irrigation adaptation in all countries in the East African community. So how are we going to bring this food security without identifying the challenges affecting irrigation, despite the fact that we're having floods everywhere, there's a lot of water, but we cannot trap this water, we cannot store it and use it, and then we see people dying. A colleague mentioned areas where people are dying of hunger, when we would have enough food for with irrigation. Because we can't do irrigation, then people end up dying with that. And actually, that's one of the contributing factors that we are all now net importers of food. All East African country partner states are importers of food. They are net importers of food. We import chicken, import. So lastly, Chair, is on the partnership. I've not had proposals on building partnerships with other organizations so that we reach as more people as possible. Because yes, the project is connected by East African Business Council, but we also need to see how we build partnership with other organizations so that we reach as many people as possible if we are to bring the transformation. Where otherwise, the majority of our people will continue dying of hunger, they will continue poor, remaining in poverty, and yet we have good projects like this. So, Chair, those are my humble submissions. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Abubakar. Now, Alfred, kindly ask your question, make it short as you're running out of time. Welcome, Alfred Kabuchu.
Thank you very much. My name is Alfred Kabuchu. I'm also an investor in the grain value addition sector. Thank you for the discussion. I'll go quickly to my questions and comments. One is that in addition to many of the challenges identified, I think one of our biggest challenges is actually access to capital. If someone or if a company is to invest in value-adding equipment at the interest rates that exist within, say, Uganda, invest in Uganda, within Uganda, and I imagine the other East African countries, these investments cannot make a lot of sense. So the East African countries need to, in a pragmatic manner, provide access to funding, provide funding to the investors in the agricultural sector, in the value-adding sector. It would make a very, very significant difference. Many of the opportunities that we talk about, the business people actually already know them. The question is the money available that is affordable to invest in these? That's one. Then the second one, apart from the high interest rates, is the long-term funding. The funding that is available is mainly from the commercial banks, which is long-term, which is short-term, or 3 to 5 years, which is they call long-term, is actually short-term. There's need for long-term funding, again, to support these investments. And then the third point is the concern on taxes. The East African countries have high taxes for investments. If you add up what you need to pay for taxes for you to have a long-term investment, you find that taxes are taking about 30 to 55% of your investment. How do we expect business people to invest and have a return and therefore add value and improve on the assurance of food security within the region when the governments want to take money even before the businessman gets a return? Thank you very much. Those are my 3 concerns.
Thank you very much, Alfred. Now I welcome Mr. Godfrey Lutwama to also ask his question. Can you make it brief?
Thank you very much for the wonderful research you have really carried out. I don't know whether I might have missed out some few points, but my concern is on basically labor. I come from National Union of Cooperative, Commercial, Agriculture and Allied Workers Union in Uganda. The issue of rural-urban migration has not been really captured yet it's critical. You realize that you cannot carry out agriculture without labor. Many of the unutilized land, you can find in rural areas there's unutilized land. And the people who would have carried out agriculture are coming to urban areas. So how best can that research really help to exercise these, the youth to engage in agriculture? And also, you realize that many of the youth would have engaged in agriculture or would have supported the agricultural companies, they are not well paid, you know, they are not well paid, and there is a high rate of turnover. Somebody works today, the next season somebody disappears. All those, I think they should be really captured so that at least there is sustainable business or sustainable agricultural business. And also the issue of agricultural insurance, I think is critical because people to be motivated to do agriculture and produce more and more, and those afraid of climate issues here and there. I think issue of crop insurance should also be thought about as one of the remedies of motivating people to engage in agriculture. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Godfrey. Just also, before I welcome Dr. Margaret Kemengich to answer the questions, allow me to clarify some of the questions which have been asked here by the stakeholders.
Patrick,
in terms of partnership,
there is Juliet who raised her hand.
Yes.
Can you also allow her, Juliet?
Yes, Juliet. Yes, Juliet is actually Dr. Godfrey Lutwama is one using the account, Juliet.
Okay.
So allow me to answer some of the questions about partnership with other organizations. So as East African Business Council, we partnered with GIZ Business Scouts and under the Business Scouts Fund together with SEQUA. And we are running this project called Improving competitiveness of the agri-food industry to improve food security in East Africa. We are partnering with different agricultural organizations and industrial associations in East Africa, and all stakeholders here are welcome to collaborate with us. And one other partners whom we are partnering are on the German side to share technical know-how. This includes the Federation of German Industries and the German Organic Food Production Alliance. So we welcome all stakeholders in the agricultural sector to also join us together in this project, and we'll be running a series of webinars and trainings in all over East African countries from Kenya to DRC. So you're all welcome. We'll keep you updated on how you can participate in our upcoming activities.
Patrick, if I may be able to add to what you said on the forging partnership, and I think it's a very pertinent question. We need to take it forward as the ABC. Again, we, as you rightly put it, with the Business Scouts, we are continuing this engagement further to deepen more engagement. But we are also engaging EABC. We are working closely with AGRA. AGRA has done quite commendable work, and we look forward to work together. Generally, we've started initiating a discussion in terms of improving cross-border flows, cross-border agriculture trade flows. And that is an area we are going to work together. Also, we are looking at we are working with the Trademark Africa on the feed with the USAID funded program called Feed the Future. They are also keen in terms of building resilience, but on some of the aspect of the value chain, including the textile and others. So that is also a kind of a partnership we are going to look into in terms of deepening and as part of this good recommendation people have provided. So I think that I wanted just to complement what Patrick said. We are not taking it right at the ABC. We are going to take it forward and ensure that the recommendation emerging or emanating from this study are implemented. We are happy with Yara. We are working together. We are happy with the EAC Secretariat. They have a full-fledged department on food security. we are going to also to bring our government in terms of addressing these daunting challenges that have been ably highlighted, which we appreciate the entire participants in terms of bringing them on board, including the decline of soil structure or soil level. So over to you, Patrick.
Thank you very much, CEO. Now I welcome Dr. Margaret to kindly give insights to the questions that were asked. Dr. Margaret.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick, and thank you all for raising those very good questions. And as the EABC have already indicated, there are already partnerships in operation. So for quite a number of these issues being raised, they are being covered elsewhere. However, I will start off with the depressed, where the 3 countries in the EAC, that is Kenya, Rwanda, and Burundi, most of whom are actually dependent on exports of agricultural produce, and they were also, the demand from the European market especially did decline, and as such, the foreign exchange also declined. That is why their currencies have depreciated very fast, and the prices in the market are very high. So it is now really the way to address this would be, how do we handle quite a number of these to make sure that you diversify your export basket, then you can have quite a number of support. You can see that those which were dependent on minerals and the fuel, those who are trading in those products, their economies are slightly better and their currencies have held. So that is a bit where now it is a matter of diversification. Secondly, since this was on food security, the bit which was now coming through is that how can we entrench food security and especially food nutrition, and the value chains which were in the sister study really go a long way to making sure that we can have the development of the food security, and particularly the grains, the legumes, and the milk and the rest of those, where we would now be improving the value addition and making sure that you can lengthen the shelf life. But more importantly, because there was a question of how can we get the youth, and this is where now EABC is not going for only the traditional farmer, but going for the business person. How can we get businesses in the agriculture sector so that we can now get the youth, the women, to engage more in the value addition, and they can innovate and make sure that really they are creating business opportunities, and that way you cannot be exposed to shock. Perhaps at a personal level, I do recall that when we were young mothers, we had to import Cerelac to feed the children. But today's child, at least they are being fed on local value-added products, and that is where the bulk of the millet and what have you, they are now being fed on locally produced products, and that is where we are now saying you can do quite a bit of those aspects. The soil fertility, if we handle the legumes, they are nitrogen fixing. They are going to help us in as far as that aspect is concerned. Then secondly, the Ukraine war has now given us the impetus to invest in fertilizer plants. So we are hoping that, once we pick that one up, we shall at least have fertilizer that can enrich the soil facility going forward. And then we get our researchers also to see what else can we do in order to improve quite a number of these aspects. We have a very unique institution, that is IALA. Now, IALA, in the case of EAC, has been very instrumental in making sure that policies are implemented at national level. Now, IALA have access to all state houses and they go direct and they can always market. So ours is to make sure that we give adequate information to IALA to make sure that those programs are, the enforcement takes place. They do go to national parliaments, so they are very good advocacy agents. Then the private sector, initially, those of you, if you were there in 1999 when we were starting and 2000, private sector was shaky. But now that we have very strong representation of the private sector, both at regional and at national level, they are really going out of their way to make sure that they do engage in business. So we are hoping that they can do quite a lot in as far as that aspect is concerned. On research and agra, on post-harvest losses handling, really those are the issues now which you do in the policy making, and that is why we are saying let's have food reserves where you can store excess. For quite a lot of this, it is at farm level and then it is at household level where the losses are, so that you end up losing half of what you actually got from the farm, and hence why we have hunger. If we kept all that food and it was available to the population, would not be having hunger. So what is it that it would cost us to make sure that we do handle the post-harvest losses adequately to ensure that we can get all these aspects? The other one is embracing the technology. Now, if we have platforms where information says, we have a lot of this type of food here in this part of the region, and one region says there is a shortage, the transporters are always on a 24-hour service, and it is really those transporters who have been taking food. It's not even governments, it is transporters going out there. So all you need is that information and making sure that at border points, we do not again lock those vehicles, and at times they are transporting perishables. So you can see governments are their own enemy, because even where food is being brought, you are blocking it at the border. So that is the bit where now we are saying, let's make sure we get these aspects. And during COVID, at least the governments went out of their way to make sure that women had kitchen gardens to make sure there was food for the children. So that bit we need to pick it up and see how best can we handle quite a number of those areas. The other area now which Patrick had raised, and if I have already taken it into account, I will not cover it, and that is really we want to make sure that it is whatever policies we are having, they are participatory. And as I had indicated, we said, let us move away from boardrooms. There is no farm in the boardroom. Farms are in the rural setting. And until this farmer knows that if I plant potatoes, I plant beans and what have you, I'll get my good return, then that is when the issues will be addressed. The issues of affordable finance, issues of ensuring that there is insurance on the crops, as the participant from Uganda had said. Those ones you've got to get the farmer going to meet the governments and saying we need this 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you are going to get a government official going to talk on your behalf, you can't go very far. So that is the bit where now we really must make sure that we are engaging. And this is where now the East African Business Council has to make sure that whenever you are doing those high-level meetings, take the ordinary farmer with you, get the value adding company with you, because once the companies present, really their story is understood better than when you go with a diplomatic language and you are addressing your boss. You don't want to annoy him, but that investor will say it as is, and they will make sure they can get this, and they can demonstrate that really you want to increase employment. And this is where we are now saying, if you are doing traditional farming, the youth will not be with you, but move into value addition. They are going to stay with you because they can see their money and they can, collect it direct. So that is where now we get those policy instruments, and you get farming smart. And this is where now you can also come up and say, how can we harvest water for irrigation? Because for some, you can do small ponds, and you will have at least water to last you for quite a bit of some time. The other one is on the livestock, because I'm trying to combine similar things, is the fact that, for example, in the case of Kenya, because that is the one I'm very familiar with, government invested in Lamport, government invested in airports, and really it is now changing the mindset of the livestock farmer to make sure that they can store. You don't need 1,000 goats, 2,000, camels and what have you. You at least sell off, keep that money in an instrument which can release money for you, giving you returns continuously. You don't have to lose all of them when the drought comes in. Because in the case of Kenya, if you sold those camels, goats, and the cows, and you invested in a bond, a treasury bond, really, you are getting income regularly without you having to worry about animals dying of hunger. So the other bits on environment will also be handled. Then there is the plastic packing. Actually, most of the imported ones are plastic packed, and some of the manufacturers. But when you go to the farm one, it is brought in sacks and brought in, crates and what have you, when it is taken into the market. So at that level, you are starting at least to handle this, but we need now some researchers to come up and say, if you pack in plastic, these are the detrimental effects. So there are quite a number of opportunities that one can handle going forward. I think I've handled the fertilizer, the seeds. I know it is unfortunate because growing up, we used to keep some of the seeds for the next season. It is now very difficult. So this is where now commercialization has to take in place, and we see how best we can handle. There was the incest in animals, and I think AI is now being used quite a lot. So I think that is where one can take into account how best we can handle these aspects. Then there are the pesticides, some of which have been banned. So we really need to do that, and where possible, use natural ways, because traditionally there were ways where you could handle even the soil, you would mulch it and do whatever. There were also traditional ways of handling pesticide related issues. So it is now the research, and we can bulk it. It is only that we have all believed that if it is not Western, we don't want to use traditional ways. Then the flooding, that is where the damming is, but dams are very expensive. So initially, one has to do the water pumps, and you utilize those areas. Partnerships has already been handled. The capital, again, this one, it has to be handled at government level, and in projects, for example, now where there are partnerships, there are grants which can be given, like the climate change, smart agriculture, there are resources which are coming through a number of banks, and they are loaned out at slightly cheaper rates. So that is the bit where one can go into, and until you package those programs, really the partner would not know what your issues are. So this is where the actual farmer now has to come in, and this must be packaged and make sure that there is insurance. So that, crop insurance in particular, it has started now picking up. I know livestock insurance is also there, but there are quite a number of nitty-gritty requirements that you must put in, and you must do monitoring. So there is a lot of capacity building, and this is where EABC now, because these farmers are doing it as business. It's not only food at the household level, but it's also business. So what is it? Capacity building, institutions, and how we can handle quite a number of those areas. So basically, I think I've tried as much as possible to look at a number of these issues to make sure that we can all address the issues and ensure that there is food security, because really you cannot outsource food security and expect that other countries will always be running to us for food, with food aid. We must invest, and they will come in when you really had an emergency which you could not anticipate. But if year in, year out, your own food aid, people, they will get tired. And I think COVID and now the Ukraine-Russia war, if we didn't wake up with those ones, then we still have a long way to go, because that is when all international markets were technically closed, and yet we needed food, we needed medicine. And that is why now we are saying we have to value add, we have to create jobs. We've been taking the youth to the Middle East, and you have all seen the challenges the youth are experiencing. We are not creating jobs for them locally. So this is the bit now. Our agriculture is the one which is going to generate the jobs. So what is it that we need to do? And we have to do it from both public sector, private sector, business associations, farmers, and agriculture being the immediate one you can use. Let's work towards that, make sure that that picks up, and we move up the value chain. Let's not just leave it at the basic production. So I thank you all for the issues you've raised, and for quite a number of them. I think the Secretariat are saying they are addressing them in different compartments. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Margaret Kimingich, for the elaborate answers to the questions which have been asked. So we are nearly going to the final part of the program. So we'll go to a session where I'll invite our CEO, together with Honorable Francois from IALA, to actually declare that the project is, the study is launched, and also declare that the project is kicked off. So Honorable Francois and CEO, kindly welcome, switch on your camera, and maybe you can just give us a word before the closing by Mr. Kalisa.
Maybe Honorable, can you start? Then
Oh.
Thank you very much for the opportunity once again. I was actually thanking you through the chat, so I couldn't just go without writing my appreciation first and foremost to this valuable invitation to participate to this meeting on behalf of the Assembly and on behalf of the Committee on HNR I represent. And I had invited some of my colleagues that are attending right now. So it's really very important, and together we will continue to brainstorm on this, because our goal is common, EABC, you know, researchers like Dr. Margaret and the team, and all participants. I have been reading through their contacts. They're very important. I took some photos of the contacts that are very useful for us to continue to work together as a team. Before I declare this useful, you know, project kicked off, allow me also to say that under EAC, we had what we call IAPA. IAPA is East African Parliamentary Alliance. And this alliance, we have got the opportunity to work closely with the EAC, and the Secretary General of that IAPA is led by Honorable Dr. Woda Jeremiah, that is a member of Parliament, Iyala as well. And this time the chairperson is a member of Parliament, National Parliament from Kenya. And the deputy chair is coming from Rwanda, Senator Honorable Letitia. So I think we have many opportunities to work together. We can even include the IGAD initiatives, because during the 4th Assembly of IAPA, I attended the last year. We were with the IGAD representation. So I think we are, you know, having a good interaction, and we will continue together with them to mitigate climate change, COVID-19 impact, food insecurity in the region, Ukraine war, and the other good initiatives we are having. Remember, we are building on the powers we are given by the treaty to make sure we legislate, we do oversight, and we represent the people of EAC. That is the most important. Representation is the key. And under representation, we do oversight, and we do as well sensitization. So this is a call for action, not only to just complain about what is going on, what is wrong, but also inform the population about what is going on, to make sure they contribute to their own food security. Because some households may have good food, they may have milk, they may have eggs, they may have, you know, those nutritious food, but they prefer to sell all of them. And we still have stunted children when we have farmers. So I think the awareness raising is also part of our research. I think we should do the mindset changing, how we can influence the theory of change to make sure all these efforts are not in vain. So with those few remarks, as I encourage EABC and commend your efforts, as I started at the beginning, that you are working very hard, Mr. CEO, with your team. Lastly, I was with one of your staff in Kigali for another activity, but we met and we toured the Kigali special zone, economic zone. We were able, you know, to visit the site of fish at that economic zone. But, you know, the production of fish, we observed it is maintained by Indians, but most of the fish we saw that are being sold at that free zone or special zone, economic zone, is coming from China. So all way from China to Kigali, tilapia, and remember that we have tilapia species in Lake Victoria, and we have Lake Victoria Fisheries Organization. We have Lake Victoria Basin Commission that should make sure we have sufficient fish production. All of these are the issues we are having, and issues that are inciting importation for these landlocked countries, because they don't have choice. They just buy from what is available. So this is availability. But we're not sure of the quality of that fish. We just eat. We don't know from which kind of ponds they were raised, you know, or produced from China, you know. And tons are being imported here in Kigali. Like we ask questions, we're told that 50 containers of fish, you know, are coming monthly. to supply, local population, but also being sold outside, sometimes outside of EAC, when we could have our water bodies with sufficient fish. So these are called for action, but also to reflect. It was just as an example among others. And these GMOs, the things we were consuming, when we could have our bio fertilizer, not using, that, chemicals or those things we were complaining about, accompanying plastics or those things, those issues. So there's a way we can improve EAC livelihood through awareness raising, sensitization, and also we keep working together to make sure we strengthen our cooperation. Thank you very much. Let me declare on behalf of the Assembly and the EAC, EAC I quote, that these projects, because there are many, it's a project, but many, is kicked off and you are ready to support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. And again, that message is very strong, that we do import things that we should be producing within our region. And I think that is the spirit of this project in terms of building a strong, sustainable and inclusive resilience in our food value chain. So I think with that, I would like to, again, also to echo to what you said. EABC with support from Business Scouts for Development. We have officially validated this study, endorsed it, and it is going to be a public document. Again, to thank the consultant, Dr. Margaret, for excellent work you've delivered. And now we've officially kicked off the project on enhancing competitiveness of agri-food industry and mitigating the impact of global crises to improve food security in the EAC. So that is officially kicked off, and we are happy that our partners, the Business Scouts, through Business Scouts, we are ready to move forward in terms of raising awareness and sensitization, as Ebre highlighted and articulated by Honorable, that we need to bring it to the farmers themselves and also the vulnerable group. Indeed, that is the aspiration of the project in terms of inclusivity, in terms of gender lens, gender consideration, including the youth in business, especially to address the issue one of the participants raised on the rural-urban migration, where people feel that, especially our youth, that opportunities are in the urban area. So we need to ensure that we continue to create opportunities in the rural areas, so that our rural area are attractive to our young people, and also make sure that our young people are attracted to agribusiness. I took a note, perhaps maybe when I'm doing closing remarks, Patrick, I took a note of areas that we need to tighten. Over to you, and I want to thank you, Honorable.
Thank you very much, CEO, and thank you very much, Honorable Francois. We have for the insightful remarks in the closing session. Now, just before we close, allow me to welcome all participants to switch on their videos so that we may take a virtual photo. Switch on your cameras, we take a photo. You're all welcome. We'd like to see your faces, and you're so happy that you have joined us in this insightful webinar. Welcome, kindly switch on your photo, your camera. Yes, our technical team, Julie and Amoniche, kindly take some photos. Yes, we can see you.
Can see you.
Smile.
One more, please. It's done.
Julia, the photos
Thank
enough?
you.
Thank you very much, Julie, and thank you to all presenters, the speakers, Honorable Francois, our CEO. You have really shared good insights on the impact of global crisis on food security. A round of applause to Dr. Margaret Kemengich for doing a great presentation on the study that you have just conducted. And to our partners, GIZ Business Scout, we appreciate you so much. And I also invite you to our webinar next week on Friday 19th. We'll be doing a webinar on a study validation on the study on investment opportunities in agricultural value chain. You're also welcome. We'll share with you more information and how to join the webinar. Thank you very much and have a great day.
You are welcome. We have already registered.
Thank you.
Yes, Patrick. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Yes,
thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you again. Let me add just my voice, my voice, Patrick. Say thank you everyone. Thank you our partner GIZ. Thank you Honorable. Thank you our board members present. Thank you to all our good participants in the value chain. I've taken a note on area that we need to work together through partnership, issues of standard and SPS, issues of creating agriculture trade hub, and also look at the issues of trade finance in agribusiness, logistics and transport, but above all, ensure that we all build a strong, coherent partnership and collaboration. So thank you very much, and I want to wish you a bon appetit. Have a great afternoon, and we look forward for deepening this partnership. Thank you to you, Patrick, who have worked tirelessly on this project. And again, thank you for very good organization and the entire team of EABC. I wanted to thank you for the good work you are doing. Asanteni sana.
Yes, CEO.
Yes,
CEO.
Honorable. Yes, Honorable.
Yeah, I have a concept note, a small concept note on the areas of cooperation as far as food security is concerned. As I will share with you, after on this.
Okay, much appreciated. It will inform this new project. It will be a part of the new project. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.